Prince Alexander sat in his private study, the weight of recent months pressing heavily on his shoulders. The grand palace walls that once felt like home now seemed to close in around him. His marriage to Princess Isabella had been strained for years, but lately, something felt different. She had grown distant, spending hours writing in a leather-bound journal that she guarded fiercely. The servants whispered about her late-night walks through the garden, her tearful phone calls to unknown persons, and her sudden interest in charity, work that took her away from the palace for days at a time. Alexander tried to bridge the gap between them, but every attempt at conversation was met with polite smiles that never reached her eyes. That evening, as autumn rain drummed against the windows, Alexander discovered Isabella had left for another charity event without saying goodbye. Her lady-in-waiting mentioned she seemed unusually emotional, clutching her journal close to her chest as she departed. The prince found himself standing in their shared chambers, staring at Isabella's writing desk, where ink stains marked countless hours of secret confessions. A small brass key lay forgotten beside a teacup, and Alexander's heart raced as he recognized it. This was the key to Isabella's private drawer, the one she thought he had never noticed her locking each night. His hands trembled as he picked it up, knowing that whatever lay inside could change everything between them forever. The palace felt eerily quiet as Alexander approached the desk. Years of royal training in diplomacy and restraint, warred with his desperate need to understand why the woman he loved had become a stranger. The key felt heavy in his palm, carrying the weight of trust, betrayal, and the possibility of truths too painful to bear. As thunder rolled across the countryside, Alexander made a decision that would shatter the careful facade of their royal marriage. He inserted the key into the lock, his heart pounding with each small click of the mechanism. Inside the drawer lay Isabella's journal, its worn leather cover speaking of countless nights of secret writing. The first page bore an inscription that made his breath catch: "To document the prison of my own making, and the love that might destroy us both." Alexander's hands shook as he realized he was about to uncover secrets that had been eating away at their marriage from within, secrets that Isabella had been too afraid or too proud to share. The storm outside intensified as if nature itself was preparing for the emotional tempest about to unfold within the palace walls. Alexander opened the journal to the first entry, dated just weeks after their wedding, and began to read words that would change his understanding of everything he thought he knew about their life together. Each word on the page seemed to pulse with Isabella's pain, her fear, and her desperate attempts to maintain the perfect royal image while struggling with demons she faced alone. Alexander realized he was about to discover not just his wife's secrets, but the depth of her suffering that she had hidden behind practiced smiles and royal duty. The weight of the journal in his hands felt heavier than any crown he had ever worn, and as he prepared to turn to the next page, Alexander understood that some truths, once revealed, could never be forgotten. The thunder outside seemed to echo the storm that was about to break within his heart. Alexander's eyes moved across the first entry, dated 3 months after their royal wedding. Isabella's handwriting, usually so elegant and controlled, appeared rushed and desperate. "I thought marriage would bring us closer, but Alexander feels like a stranger living in the same palace. Every morning we perform our roles perfectly for the cameras, but when the doors close we are two lonely people pretending to be happy." The prince felt his throat tighten as he read on. Isabella had written about their public appearances, describing how she practiced her smile in the mirror each morning, counting the seconds until she could retreat to her chambers. She wrote about feeling like a butterfly pinned to a display case, beautiful but lifeless, watched by millions but understood by no one. Page after page revealed Isabella's growing isolation. She described royal events where she stood beside Alexander, waving to crowds while feeling utterly alone. "Today at the children's hospital opening, I held a sick child who reminded me of my younger brother. I wanted to cry, to hold him longer, to be human instead of royal. But the cameras clicked and I had to move on to the next photo opportunity." Alexander discovered entries about their private moments that he remembered differently. A dinner where he thought they had enjoyed quiet conversation was described by Isabella as another evening of careful small talk, both of us afraid to say what we really feel. A weekend getaway he remembered as romantic was chronicled as two people sharing a beautiful prison, both too proud to admit we are unhappy. The journal revealed Isabella's desperate attempts to connect with him. She had planned surprise dinners that he missed due to royal duties, written letters she never sent, and rehearsed conversations about their future that never happened. I wanted to tell Alexander about my fears today, about how this life sometimes makes me feel like I am disappearing. But he was tired from state meetings and I chose silence over adding to his burdens. One entry made Alexander's hands shake. Isabella had written about a night when she heard him crying in his study after a particularly difficult day with Parliament. She had stood outside his door for an hour, wanting to comfort him but afraid he would see her concern as weakness. We are both drowning in the same ocean but too proud to reach for each other's hands. The journal chronicled Isabella's growing depression, hidden behind designer gowns and perfect makeup. She wrote about panic attacks before public events, about nights when she could not sleep for worry about disappointing the kingdom, and about the weight of constant scrutiny that made every genuine emotion feel like a betrayal of her duty. Alexander read about Isabella's secret meetings with a therapist, disguised as charity work. She had been trying to find ways to cope with the pressure, to be a better wife and princess, but she had been doing it all alone. Dr. Harrison says I need to communicate with Alexander, but how can I burden him with my weakness when he carries the weight of the entire kingdom? The entries revealed Isabella's deep love for Alexander, but also her fear that their roles as royals had killed any chance of real intimacy between them. She wrote about watching him during state dinners, seeing glimpses of the man she fell in love with, but feeling unable to reach past the walls of protocol and duty that surrounded them both. As Alexander turned each page, he realized that while he had been struggling with his own loneliness and the pressures of royal life, Isabella had been fighting the same battles in silence. They had been like two people lost in the same dark forest, calling out but never hearing each other's voices over the noise of their royal obligations. The journal entries grew more heart-wrenching as Alexander continued reading. Isabella had written about their struggles to start a family, a topic they had barely discussed aloud. Another month, another disappointment. The doctors say there's nothing wrong, but I see the questions in the newspapers, the whispers at court. Alexander pretends it does not matter, but I catch him staring at children during our public visits with such longing in his eyes. Isabella had documented her secret visits to fertility specialists, the hormones that made her emotional and sick, and the crushing weight of knowing that the kingdom expected an heir. She wrote about lying awake at night feeling like a failure as both a woman and a princess. The irony is cruel. I am surrounded by luxury and privilege, yet I cannot give Alexander the one thing that would make him truly happy. One particularly painful entry revealed Isabella's discovery of love letters Alexander had written to someone before their marriage. She had found them while organizing his desk as a surprise, and the passionate words he had written to another woman broke her heart. Reading his letters to Lady Catherine showed me a side of Alexander I have never seen. He wrote about love with such fire, such genuine emotion. I realized that what we have is duty decorated to look like love. The journal revealed Isabella's growing friendship with Marcus, her bodyguard's younger brother who worked as a stable hand. Unlike everyone else in their world, Marcus treated her like a normal person, not a princess. Marcus asked me today if I was happy. Such a simple question, but no one has asked me that in years. I could not answer him because I have forgotten what happiness feels like. Alexander felt a stab of jealousy and pain as he read about Isabella's innocent but growing emotional connection to Marcus. She wrote about conversations they had while she visited the horses, how he made her laugh without protocol or pretense. With Marcus, I can be angry or sad or silly without worrying about disappointing a kingdom. He sees Isabella the person, not the princess. The entries revealed Isabella's internal struggle between her growing feelings for Marcus and her loyalty to Alexander and the crown. She wrote about the guilt that consumed her, even though their friendship remained entirely proper. I love Alexander, but I am in love with the idea of being loved as I am, not as I should be. Marcus represents a life I can never have, a simplicity that feels like freedom. Isabella had documented her decision to distance herself from Marcus, recognizing the danger her feelings represented. I told Marcus today that I could no longer visit the stables. I saw the hurt in his eyes, but I could not explain that my heart is no longer entirely my own to give. This is the price of duty. Even my emotions belong to the crown. The journal revealed Isabella's plan to confess everything to Alexander. She had been preparing for weeks, writing drafts of what she would say, how she would explain her loneliness, her friendship with Marcus, and her desperate desire to make their marriage real. Tomorrow I will tell Alexander everything. I will risk his anger, his disappointment, even his rejection, because living this lie is killing us both slowly. Alexander realized with growing horror that the confession Isabella had been preparing never happened. He remembered the day she was referring to. She had seemed nervous at breakfast, had asked to speak with him privately after his meetings. But urgent matters of state had kept him busy until late evening, and by the time he returned to their chambers, Isabella had already gone to bed. The next journal entry was written in different ink, clearly days later. I lost my courage. Alexander was so tired, so burdened with affairs of state. How could I add my problems to his load? I will try again when the time is right. But Alexander could see from the subsequent entries that the right time never came, and Isabella's pain only deepened as she continued to carry her secrets alone. Alexander's vision blurred with tears as he reached the most recent entries. Isabella's writing had become increasingly desperate, her perfect penmanship deteriorating into urgent scrawls. I feel like I'm losing myself completely. This morning I looked in the mirror and did not recognize the woman staring back. She had my face, but her eyes were empty, like someone had stolen her soul piece by piece. The journal revealed Isabella's growing panic attacks, which she had hidden from everyone, including the palace doctor. She described episodes during state functions where she struggled to breathe, where the walls seemed to close in despite being in vast ballrooms filled with hundreds of people. During the ambassador's reception, I had to excuse myself to the powder room 3 times. Each time I gripped the sink and told myself to breathe, to smile, to be what everyone expects me to be. Isabella had written about her increasing reliance on sleeping pills and anxiety medication, prescribed by a private doctor who asked no questions. Dr. Reynolds gives me what I need to get through each day, each public appearance. Alexander thinks I am tired from charity work, but really I am tired from pretending to be alive when I feel like I am dying inside. One entry made Alexander's blood run cold. Isabella had written about standing on their private balcony at 3 a.m., looking down at the courtyard below and wondering what it would feel like to simply step off the edge. Not because I want to die, but because I want this pain to stop. I want to stop being a disappointment to everyone, including myself. The journal revealed that Isabella had been receiving anonymous threatening letters, something she had hidden from palace security. People blamed her for not producing an heir, called her selfish and worthless, threatened violence if she did not step aside for someone who could give the prince children. Today's letter was the worst yet. They know about my medical treatments, about my struggles to conceive. How do they know such private things? I feel hunted, like prey that cannot escape. Alexander discovered that Isabella had been secretly meeting with lawyers, exploring the possibility of divorce, not because she did not love him, but because she believed he deserved better than what she could give him. Mr. Whitman explained the process today. The scandal would be enormous, but Alexander could remarry someone younger, someone who could give him children and happiness. Maybe loving him means letting him go. The most heartbreaking entries were letters Isabella had written to Alexander, but never given him. Page after page of her pouring out her love, her fears, her desperate desire to be enough for him. My dearest Alexander, I know I have failed you in so many ways. I see how you look at me sometimes, not with anger, but with sadness, as if you are mourning something we never had. I am mourning it too. Isabella had written about her final decision. She was planning to leave. Not for Marcus, who had already moved away to avoid scandal, but to disappear entirely. I have arranged everything. In 3 days during the charity gala, I will slip away. By the time anyone notices, I will be gone. Alexander will be free to find real love, real happiness, and I will stop being the anchor that drags down his reign. The journal contained detailed plans for her disappearance, fake identification papers, and a bank account in a different name. Isabella had been planning to vanish during the chaos of their biggest annual charity event, when hundreds of people would provide cover for her escape. She had even written her suicide note, not because she planned to harm herself, but to make everyone believe she was dead, so Alexander could move on without the scandal of divorce. Alexander realized with horror that tomorrow was the charity gala. Isabella had been planning her escape for months, and he had been completely unaware that his wife was preparing to erase herself from existence rather than continue living in their beautiful prison. The woman he loved had been planning to sacrifice her very identity to free him from a marriage she believed was destroying them both. His hands shook as he turned to the final entry, written just that morning before Isabella left for what she believed would be her last royal event. Tomorrow I become someone new, someone free. I pray that someday Alexander will understand that I left not because I stopped loving him, but because I loved him too much to keep breaking his heart. Alexander closed the journal and sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down his face. The woman he had lived beside for 3 years had been dying inside while he remained blind to her suffering. Every polite smile, every gracious wave, every perfect public appearance had been Isabella slowly disappearing behind a mask of royal duty. He looked at the clock, 11:47 p.m. The charity gala was in full swing across town, and Isabella was there right now, probably making her final preparations to vanish forever. Alexander's mind raced as he calculated how long it would take to reach the venue, to find her in the crowd of hundreds of guests, to somehow convince her that their marriage was worth saving. The prince grabbed his coat and ran through the palace corridors, his dress shoes echoing against marble floors. He needed to reach Isabella before she executed her plan, before she walked away from their life and became a ghost haunting his memories forever. Every second felt precious as he realized how close he had come to losing her without ever truly knowing her. During the frantic car ride to the gala, Alexander's mind replayed every missed opportunity, every moment when Isabella had tried to reach out and he had been too busy with royal duties to notice. He remembered her nervous energy that morning weeks ago when she had wanted to talk, the very conversation that might have saved them if he had not been consumed with affairs of state. The charity gala was a glittering spectacle of wealth and nobility, hundreds of people in designer gowns and tailored suits celebrating another successful fundraising year. Alexander burst through the entrance, his hair disheveled and his formal jacket wrinkled, drawing stares from surprised guests who had never seen their composed prince looking so desperate. He searched the crowd frantically, his eyes scanning every face, every figure in an evening gown. The ballroom felt endless, filled with people who all looked the same in their formal attire and practiced smiles. Alexander pushed through conversations and social circles, ignoring protocol and proper greetings as he hunted for the one person who mattered. Lady Catherine, his former love whose letters Isabella had discovered, approached him with concern. "Alexander, you look terrible." "What is wrong?" But he barely heard her. His attention focused entirely on finding Isabella before it was too late. The irony was not lost on him that the woman Isabella felt she could not compete with was now witnessing his desperate search for his wife. Alexander found Isabella's lady-in-waiting near the silent auction tables. "Where is the princess?" he demanded, his voice harsh with panic. The woman looked confused, explaining that Isabella had excused herself to the powder room 20 minutes ago and had not returned. Alexander felt his heart sink as he realized Isabella's plan was already in motion. He ran toward the ladies' room, not caring about the shocked gasps of guests who watched their prince break every rule of royal decorum. But the powder room was empty except for an elderly duchess fixing her lipstick. Alexander asked if she had seen Isabella, but the woman had been there alone for the past quarter hour. Panic rising in his chest, Alexander began checking every exit, every service corridor, every possible escape route Isabella might have used. The palace security team, alerted by his frantic behavior, joined the search but found no trace of the princess. She had vanished as completely as she had planned, leaving behind only her evening purse and the diamond tiara that had belonged to Alexander's grandmother. In the hotel room Isabella had secretly rented, Alexander found evidence of her transformation. Designer gowns hung in the closet while simple clothes lay packed in a worn suitcase. Her official identification and credit card sat on the dresser beside a dark wig and colored contact lenses. Isabella had prepared to become someone entirely new, someone free from the burden of royal expectations. A note lay on the hotel pillow, written in Isabella's careful script. "By the time you read this, Isabella will no longer exist. Please do not look for someone who was never meant to be. Remember the woman who loved you enough to set you free." Alexander held the note against his chest and wept. understanding that his wife had chosen to die to herself, rather than continue living a life that was slowly killing her spirit. The prince sat alone in the anonymous hotel room, surrounded by the remnants of a life Isabella had been planning to abandon. For the first time, he truly understood the weight of the crown they both carried, and how it had crushed the woman he loved until she saw no choice but to disappear, rather than continue pretending to be someone she could never become. Alexander spent the entire night searching the city, visiting every train station, bus terminal, and airport. He showed Isabella's photograph to security guards, taxi drivers, and hotel clerks, desperate for any sign of where she might have gone. But Isabella had planned her disappearance perfectly. She had vanished without leaving a single trace. As dawn broke over the kingdom, Alexander sat alone in his car outside the city limits, staring at his phone. He could call the police, launch a massive search, mobilize the entire royal security apparatus. But doing so would expose Isabella's secret, turn her private pain into public scandal, and destroy the very privacy she had died to protect. The prince made a decision that went against every instinct of his royal training. Instead of raising an alarm, he returned to the palace and began the most difficult performance of his life. He told the staff that Isabella was ill, that she needed privacy to recover. He canceled their upcoming engagements and created a buffer of time to decide what to do next. For 3 days, Alexander lived in limbo. He performed his royal duties mechanically while every spare moment was consumed with reading and rereading Isabella's journal. Each entry revealed new layers of her suffering that he had missed, new opportunities for connection that his royal obligations had stolen from them. On the 4th morning, Alexander's private secretary brought him an unmarked envelope that had been delivered by anonymous messenger. Inside was a single photograph. Isabella sitting in a small cafe, her hair short and dyed brown, wearing simple clothes and reading a book. She looked different, younger somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. On the back of the photograph, in Isabella's handwriting, were just 4 words: "I am finally free." Alexander studied her face in the image, searching for signs of the depression and panic that had consumed her final months as a princess. Instead, he saw something he had not seen in years: genuine peace in her eyes. Alexander made another decision that would have shocked the royal advisors. He began writing his own journal, documenting his realizations about their marriage, his regrets about the opportunities he had missed, and his growing understanding of how the institution of monarchy had slowly poisoned their chance at real love. Months passed without any word from Isabella. Alexander told increasingly elaborate stories to explain her absence, claiming she was receiving treatment at a private facility in Switzerland. The lies came easily now, protecting Isabella's secret as fiercely as she had protected his feelings during their marriage. Then, almost a year after her disappearance, Alexander received a letter with no return address. Isabella had written to tell him she was safe, that she had found work as a teacher in a small town where no one knew her real identity. She thanked him for not exposing her disappearance, for giving her the gift of invisibility she had craved for so long. The letter contained an unexpected invitation. "If you ever want to see who I really am, without the crown and the protocol, there is a small bookshop on Maple Street in Millbrook. I work there on Wednesdays. Come as Alexander the man, not Alexander the prince, and maybe we can finally have that conversation we were always too afraid to start." Alexander stared at the letter for hours, torn between his duty to the crown and his love for the woman who had sacrificed everything to escape it. The kingdom expected their prince to be married to their princess. But what if both the prince and princess wanted to be ordinary people who could love each other without the weight of a nation's expectations? For the first time since Isabella's disappearance, Alexander smiled genuinely. He looked at his calendar, noting that the next Wednesday was free of official engagements. Perhaps it was time to discover what Alexander the man might have to say to Isabella the woman. In a small bookshop where crowns and protocols could not follow them, the journal Isabella had left behind sat open on his desk to the final page, where she had written, "True love might mean loving someone enough to let them go, but maybe it also means being brave enough to follow them into a simpler, truer life." Alexander picked up his pen and wrote his first response to his wife in over a year. "Then let us be brave together and find out who we really are."